Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back. It's been, God, a year, I think, since I've done a review, but figure what better chance to do one than with Iron Man 3 just coming out.
Agreed. I'll get a second on that. Agreed.
Oh, that's a new voice that you're recognizing. That's my good friend Scott here. This is Josh Hunter, your host, I guess. Been drinking
MC, if you will.
There you go. Been drinking a little bit, so bear with me. We'll get through this.
This is the point, right? No. If there isn't alcohol involved, we're not doing our job, right?
We're here to help you people. But anyways, we're here to talk about, I think, one of the easily most anticipated movies of the summer in Iron Man 3. And between me, Scott here, and Mr. Colin, who will be joining us on our Star Trek audio review, I was the one by far looking forward to this the most. I've been watching all the trailers, been mentioning it pretty much every other day, as Scott will tell you. He's
Well, I mean, every day you'd probably say that every other day.
Yeah, fair enough. And
the countdown was very clear.
yeah, not quite as bad as when I was waiting for Olsons to turn 18, but still pretty good. But anyway.
It's like pretty neck and neck.
Yeah, close enough. But with this movie coming out, I was really concerned a little bit because in the nerd community, at least, Iron Man 1 is regarded as maybe the quintessential comic book movie. Maybe Dark Knight's right there in the same conversation. And then Iron Man 2 came out, and that was just a money grab. I mean, it wasn't a terrible movie, but it damn sure wasn't as good as it should have been. So the interesting thing about this being is that with the Avengers coming out, pre-Avengers, at least Iron Man 2 will fly. I mean, that would work. But after seeing the Avengers come together and seeing how good that movie was, Iron Man 2, another one of those, wouldn't fly in a movie like after seeing something like the Avengers.
Pun intended.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that. I'm so much more clever than I realized. Anyways, but seeing all the trailers and everything and realizing that Favreau wasn't doing this one, surprisingly, and they got Shane Black to do it. He was only directed 2 movies, I believe. Lethal Weapon and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think that's the only things he's actually directed.
Which are, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is a great movie, by the way.
And Lethal Weapon is easily one of the best films of the 80s. Actually, to this day, it's one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. I was optimistic, but I was cautiously optimistic because...
Well, coming from a comic/nerd perspective, obviously you're going to be excited. And one of your favorite actors is in it as well. So the build-up, the anticipation, if it didn't meet your anticipation, is going to be kind of a bummer. But, well, you know, it did.
Well, the problem with this movie, well, not problem, but one of the things with this movie is that Marvel's Phase 2 launches with this movie, so Marvel has a lot right on this, because this leads into Thor, The Dark World, which leads into Captain America, The Winter Soldier, which leads into The Avengers 2, which leads into Doctor Strange, and it's just all kind of snowballs from this film. So, was it good? Yeah.
Wait, okay, alright, let's rewind here. Let's go through, well... The reaction now compared to coming out of the movie might be different, correct?
Not that much, actually.
No?
Not that much.
We coming out giving it 1 grade, and we talked about it for a while, didn't we?
We did, like, but okay, you know, before we get into that,
let's continue.
We'll give you a very, very brief summary. By the way, subscribe to our channel because we're fantastic and we're here for you guys, but you don't have to worry about spoilers with our audio reviews unless we go, hey, from this point on, we're going to talk about spoiler material.
We'll have a great soundbite in there for spoiler.
There you go. We'll probably have this cat meowing or something like that. But basically, guys, you don't have to worry about spoilers. But basically, starting off this movie, it's almost more of an Avengers sequel than an Iron Man 2 sequel. It's almost like it almost felt like a reboot. It kind of felt like Skyfall of Iron Man, if that makes any sense. Like, they kind of, like, how they had Casino Royale, and then Quantum of Solace came out, which was meh. And then they kind of went like, oh, okay, that movie wasn't that good. Let's just kind of almost reboot the reboot that we did. It felt like that after the Avengers. It was like, okay, we have this movie that made a ridiculous amount of money, and we kind of established Iron Man as a more central character and kind of grounded him a little more. So let's just ignore the crap fest that was Iron Man 2. Just kind of reboot him again. And so I would highly recommend watching the Avengers before you watch this movie. You don't need to see Iron Man 2. You can skip Iron Man 2. It's kind of actually pointless to kind of watch.
Yeah, if you just went Iron Man 1 just straight to Iron Man 3, you really wouldn't miss too much in the way of action / plot line.
Yeah. It's not it's almost disregarded, so you're almost kind of wasting 2 hours by watching it.
It's like there's this self-recognition of what actually happened in the second movie. I mean, like, alright, okay. It's time to reboot a little bit on this third one.
So this movie actually picks up, it starts off with a flashback to 1999, and which was very interesting. They start off playing Eiffel 65, which I was like, oh god, I do remember the song, but it starts, but the cool thing about this movie though, and this is in no way spoiler, but it actually shows that yeah, Tony Stark is this great character and he's charismatic and he's rich and he's smart, but it's like, but it does kind of show you that if you're a dick to someone and they kind of hold on to it, it can come back to bite you, and I appreciate that the fact that the movie kind of goes, well.
Just a recognition of that. It's very hard to see in sequels that there's a recognition of, hey, being a little bit of a dick. It comes back to bite you once in a while.
And he was a total. And Guy Pearce, by the way, who plays Killian, was awesome in this. But yeah, you see Robert Downey Jr. and he's still in that Tony Stark, like the peak of his just arrogance just before.
Oh, absolutely, completely just whatever you think Tony Stark is. That is Robert Downey Jr. and his cockiness. It's full force in this movie.
Now to just pretty much give you a very quick summary, basically, Tony Stark is suffering from the events after the Avengers. It's a really, really subtle thing, but I appreciate the fact they brought this in because even as a kid, I would watch Star Trek and go, you're going through wormholes and all this crap, and there's never any consequences to it. You just kind of move on to the next episode. The fact that Tony Stark falls through a wormhole and that he's actually dealing with post-traumatic stress, I'm like, that's such a subtle little thing, but it was such a whoever decided to put that in, top marks to you, because
it's just a great way to connect the audience with the previous films, and that it actually happened. A lot of films don't acknowledge that things actually happened in previous movies, and that there's an after effect of it. It just snap your fingers and it's all away, and it just magically everything is great again.
I think the cool thing about the Avengers though, and especially the fact that they actually call back to the Avengers in that way, it's a pretty big plot point, is the fact that as you're watching the movie, that's always in the back of your mind, he could have a breakdown at any second because he's still dealing with this shit, and it's like, oh, well, that actually adds another level of intensity and kind of dread to this movie. And so he's dealing with that. He's just been kind of going nuts building all these suits. He's up to Mark 42, if memory serves correctly. He's at Mark 7, there you go, in the Avengers. So he's built 35 suits in between the Avengers. And shut up, I know myself. He's built 35.
I'm not laughing at you because you know your stuff. I'm laughing at it because he built 42 suits.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both that you're laughing at.
All right, yeah.
There you go. But he's built 35 armors in between the Avengers and the events of Iron Man 3, and you're sitting there just like, wow, he's kind of losing it. There's a scene really early on that they actually show in the second trailer where you see him laying in bed with Pepper, and you see the armor just come up, and I looked at Scott at this point, I was like, oh wow, this is not screwing around. This is a much darker tone than the first two.
Exactly. When things happen in this movie, it's like you really get a feel for it. They really try. And that whole sequence itself, you learn a lot of things about the new suits, and it kind of really sets things off. I go, that's not really in the beginning of the movie, but it really becomes the action for the most part.
I will say one thing and I know you're listening to an Iron Man 3 review, and yet I'm bashing on Iron Man 2 a bunch.
Well, you'll have to listen to an Iron Man 2 review.
Yeah, well, we'll do an Iron Man 2 review. But the thing is about Iron Man 2 is that, I mean, the action scenes were pretty good in it, especially the last 20 minutes is pretty badass. But I never felt like he was in danger at any point. I'm just like, okay.
Absolutely.
I'm like, you're going to get through this fine because you're Tony Stark. There were multiple points watching this, I'm like, you just might be fucked. And things just may not end well. And
that's what keeps the excitement going, is not knowing whether Tony Stark is going to live or die or not. Excuse me. And they kind of give you that with that kind of, I believe it's in the trailer with the main action scene where his house gets demolished, and it's in the trailer, so it's not necessarily a spoiler. So his house gets demolished, and you really get to see, number one, his suit, but also kind of him in peril, like for the not just I can just call on my suit whenever I want to. It's a legitimate scene where we don't know whether he's going to live or die or not.
But just to finish up this very quick plot synopsis, pretty much Tony Stark is dealing with post-traumatic stress. He's having breakdowns. He's built all these suits, and then the Mandarin shows up, who, if Colin will tell you, he's not here, but he will tell you, that I called this years ago. I was like, oh, he'll be in the third one. And I remember Colin exactly saying, they won't get to a third one. I'm like, oh, they'll get to a third one. And as soon as this came out, I was like,
I feel like half of this podcast going to be like, ha! I told you so! You know what? This is audio recording of me telling you that this would happen, and guess what? You can suck it.
What can I say? What can I say? I like being right, but the Mandarin is played by Ben Kingsley. Sorry, Sir Ben Kingsley. I apologize.
Benighted Ben
Kingsley. Oscar-winning Ben Kingsley. And all joking aside, I was beyond ecstatic when I heard he was going to be playing the Mandarin. I'm like, oh wow, that's a really good choice. But after seeing him in The Love Guru, I'm like, you kind of need this movie.
Absolutely.
And shockingly, I thought he was right up there for Rob Downey Jr. I thought he was incredible when he was on screen. There was about the first 45 minutes. I'll just tell you, if you're a kid or you're expecting something a little lighter, you're probably going to be disappointed, because there's a lot of stuff in here where I'm like, this is a lot darker than I expect. Like, when I saw the first trailer, I remember on YouTube, I read this comment that said Iron Man Rises, and I was like, that's kind of funny. I was like, and as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, it kind of is Iron Man Rises. Like, it's not to the level of Dark Knight Rises, but I think that since the fact that Tony Stark is so much more of a likable character than Bruce Wayne, because he's not such an asshole to people that are in his life, you kind of watch it and you're like, dude, you just can't catch a break, can you? Like, because when his house gets destroyed, it's one of those things where it's like, wow, that sucks. Like, you see his cars fall in the ocean, and like,
right,
and like Pepper get blown back, and it's like, oh my god, you're this sucks.
And that brings into discussion the whole Pepper Tony Stark relationship, which is one of the only things I had a problem with in the movie, was the relationship. And, you know, the first one mainly, the second one kind of, there was always some tension between them. There was always, you don't really know, especially in the first one, you don't know if they're gonna hook up or like be together. And the third one was just very mediocre when it came to their emotional relationship together. It was very it was pretty boring, to be honest with you. But when it came to, you know, Tony having to fight for her, that's where it really came back for me personally, is when you know, he made a point that she was very important in his life. So that kind of made a point that things were going to happen, and then that he was going to try to make things right with her. But up until that point, it was just very blah.
See, it's funny you bring that point up, because I remember thinking, because I remember seeing the first trailer and him, second trailer, pardon me, and him going, you know, I have to protect everything that I care about, and that's you. Mm-hmm. Now, I was like, okay, that's a really cool line. I was actually waiting for him to say that line. Now, with that said, Happy Hogan, Jon Favreau, who I was really happy he kind of put his pride aside, even though he wasn't directing this, and actually acted. And then I was like, I'm really happy that him and Shane Black were able to work that out. And for as little as he's in the movie, he does have a plot point that kind of makes you go, okay, this is after this plot point happens, like, okay, now we've kicked into that next gear, and it's pretty much action and intense after that. With that said, if you care so much about Pepper, why the hell would you give the Mandarin your home address? That was some. I was sitting there in the theater. I'm like, you dumb mother. I'm just like, why would you do that? And I'm sitting there holding my head like you. It
was like it was almost like they didn't know where to start it. So they were like, hey, let's have this press conference where Tony Stark's there and he's just being an arrogant asshole like he always is, and he just challenges him to come to his house pretty much, and they just kind of come up with it just seemed a little bit not lazy, but almost predictable in a way. I feel like because he's always in the limelight and he's always looking for the attention, so calling for him to come and meet him for a fight is, what do you else expect to happen, you know?
See, the thing is, like, I'm torn on that plot point because part of me is like, you arrogant, no good. But it's like that is so Tony Stark's character. Like, I mean, even as much as he grows, there's still that cocky part of him that will resurface. But then the other part of me is like, that's such a ballsy man move. It's like, that's awesome that you have the balls to just go, here's my address, mofo. Come get me. Like,
I wish I was an asshole. Like, and if I was an asshole, I'd be just like Tony Stark. But I'm not,
I mean, and we touched on this. When his house gets destroyed, it gets destroyed. There is nothing left of his goddamn house.
Yeah,
it's like,
I mean, there's kind of a ending scene where, you know, he's at his house and there is implications, and it's just like completely demolished. There's absolutely nothing left of his house.
Now, to get into the comic a little bit here, because now... And we can't get into spoilers because I promised you guys we wouldn't. But there is a twist in this movie, and last I checked, Iron Man 3 was at 70, I believe it was 78% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what is the comic version of that? Since I'm not comically inclined.
The thing is with this movie,
is it accurate or is it not?
It's not.
Okay.
The thing is, it borrows it from the comic book. Comic book line Extremis, which is the virus that makes the people explode and glow and all that, which is in the movie. The problem is that if you want to start picking this apart, Pepper Potts isn't originally in that storyline at all. Like, he's absent. There's no Happy Hogan. So, I mean, there are a lot of people who are kind of like, well, Pepper's in this, and then this is taken out, and da-da-da-da. And it's like, the thing is, like, comic book fans are probably the only fans that are more picky than Harry Potter fans. It's like, well, this isn't in there, and this isn't in there. It's like, you know what?
Not as most book fans, as most book followers as well.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about, like, Percy Jackson or something like that. Like, I just...
Well, you know, when we eventually go over the Twilight trilogy... There is. Have you read the books, by the way?
I have not.
I haven't either. We're gonna have to ask one of our female friends.
To quote Paramore, I refuse. I will not read those goddamn books. But, like,
oh, they have a Twilight song. I didn't know that.
That's
Paramore. Track to Twilight.
Paramore's amazing. It's the code of those. Anyways, but the thing is though, like, comic book fans, like, I use this analogy quite a bit, but it's like a kid when they're like 4 or 5 and they go like, hey, I want ice cream for breakfast, and the parents like, no, you can't have that, and the kids start screaming and crying. It's like, look, I'm doing this because I love you. Comic book fans don't always know what they want. I mean,
right.
look at Spider-Man 3. We said we want Venom, and we didn't get Venom. We got a very terrible version of Venom. And with this movie, it's like, look, Extremis was a great comic book run. It's easily top 5 that they've actually done with Iron Man. you can make the case it's as good as Demon in the Bottle, but that's a whole nother topic. They do pick and choose things from that arc. So if, as someone that's read the arc, you'd probably actually be better served to not read it before you go in this movie, because if you go in just fresh off reading it, you might find more things to nitpick. I had actually read it about a month ago, and I was just like, oh, well, they did this and changed this and da-da-da. So I would actually recommend reading it after you watch the movie. But what they do take out had to be taken out, and what they added in had to be added in for the movie. So, you know, you do kind of have to take the good with the bad in this. With that said, this twist that does occur about halfway through the movie.
And I feel like we both agreed on this, that we weren't angered by it. Like, it wasn't a twist that was like, us personally, and you being kind of a comic, not maniac, but fan, just purist, you weren't mad about it.
I wasn't mad about it, because the thing is, guys...
It was more about the liberties that a director takes with a movie, that they can kind of mold it any way they want, and writers as well as that, but, you know, just kind of takes it in a different direction, and I personally enjoyed it. I was a little bit distracted by the Mandarin, personally, with his so-called accent that he uses, and I was relieved when just things happen and the twist occurs, and I was glad about that. But personally, I think, and I know you, Josh, kind of felt the same on that.
Boys and girls, I'm gonna tell you right now, you gotta give the twist a chance, because I'll be the first to admit, when this twist comes, I wanted to go Def Comedy Jam and kind of go motherfucker, but then like,
and it wasn't even like a twist. It wasn't even like, what?
Yeah, like,
it was like it was very flowing with the movie, and it happened naturally, I feel, but I can see how it angered purists, but I enjoyed it. I liked it.
The thing is, the twist, as much as we're calling it a twist, is very organic to the trilogy, and you have to keep that in mind. For what they've set up, especially in the first movie, I highly recommend you go back and watch the first movie before you watch this, because when this twist occurs, and you think back to the first movie, you'll go, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense for the continuity of what the films have built. You can't think about the comics. You gotta think about just the films. Mm-hmm. If you think about it in that respect, you'll go, you know what? Okay, this works. And most of the complaints I've read are about that twist.
Let's talk a little bit about Tony Stark's time in the suit as well, because there have been negative comments on that as well, if you wanted to indulge on that a little bit.
See, the thing about this is, if you watch Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 1 is so great because it is him building the suit and going through the marks and going like, okay, this is what I have to do to get to here, to get to this point, to get to this point. Iron Man 2 is very much him, you know, going through his personal struggles and then finally getting that last suit. Iron Man 3, there's a lot of him out of the suit, and a lot of people complained about that, but what
because a lot of people go into an Iron Man movie thinking, oh, I'm going to see him in the suit flying around shooting people and just getting his destruction on, but it presents it in a way where you enjoy it. It's not like you wish that there were more time in the suit, as though, you know, apparently a few people think so, but I know you did enjoy it. The development of the character rather than him in the suit all the time, and plus it develops into the ending where you kind of get the action that you need. It's for the action junkies that want to see him in the suit. It's there. The action is there. The what you're expecting, what you expect out of Iron Man and Tony Stark is going to be there. It's just that the way they start it and the way they go about it is still a little bit different than they have in the first one. And the first one is different because, you know, he's building it and discovering it, you know.
The thing with that as far as his time in the suit. I think people kind of need to get like, and I don't want to keep making this comparison, but this movie does in many ways kind of mirror itself off Dark Knight Rises, and I remember that was my biggest complaint about Dark Knight Rises. I'm like, I'm seeing a lot of Bruce Wayne, but Bruce Wayne's not doing really shit. He's just kind of bitching and being kind of a dick, and not even like an entertaining dick like Tony Stark. He's just being an asshole. Like, that's a whole nother review, so I'll spare everyone from me ranting about that. But in this movie, what I appreciate is that when Tony Stark is Tony Stark, he has to actually like think shit out without the armor, and I appreciate. And it made me relate to the character more because like it's like he's kind of like there's a scene where he's in this really small town with this little kid who I thought was one of the best parts in the movie, but he's in this town with this little kid, and these soldiers are coming after him, and he's like, oh wow, I have no armor. Okay, I have to kind of figure out how to kill these guys without my armor. It's like, and it's a very subtle reminder that this guy's a brilliant scientist, and he knows what he's doing even without the armor. It's like, you know what?
Yep.
Bravo, movie, for kind of reminding me of that. We're sitting here just pretty much praising this movie. As far as complaints, even though I didn't mind him being out of the armor, one thing that really bugged me, and the more I thought about it after we got out of the movie, the more it did bug me. I like the fact they expanded Rhodey's role, Don Cheadle, who took over for Terrence Howard, who was not good in the first one. But anyway, it's a whole other thing. They expanded his role as Rhodey, but he's in the War Machine armor for like 3 minutes, and it's the most aggravating thing going back and watching that. It's like, you couldn't have given more time in the suit. That's a little aggravating. So that's one complaint I had. As far as another complaint, I can't even think of the actress's name. I feel bad. I can't remember it. But she plays a scientist who helps find extremists. She's a plot device. That's literally all she is. You get no development of her character. She's pretty much there for 10 minutes, and as soon as you forget her name, she's pretty much gone. It's like, okay. In the comics, she played a much bigger role, so I was kind of disappointed in the way they kind of almost treated her like a glorified extra. That bothered me. And I'm trying to think of anything else I can actually complain about. Oh, here you go. Shane Black, he's only done a few movies that he's directed. He has this obsession with Christmas time. I don't know what it is, but it is aggravating as hell. Because Lethal Weapon, Christmas time. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Christmas time. And this one is like, oh my god, get over it. It's like, oh, I get it.
You it's like the nostalgic Christmas feeling that you want everybody to feel while you're watching the movie.
It's like, and it's not even subtle. It's like, my god, I get it. You like Christmas. Just get over it. And just, but, with that said, I'm trying to think of anything else I could complain about. You got anything?
I would enjoy. I mean, as much as I can appreciate a character development outside of a $1 billion suit, I would have liked to see Tony maybe not in his suit, but in a lot of his different suits that he presents, and they kind of push that aside a little bit. Okay. And let his character shine, which is completely fine. But I really like how they showcase that things that happen in the past actually affect you in the future, and that just because one movie happened doesn't mean the other one is connected in certain ways, but not that Tony is completely, removed from that situation, that, the emotions from the first or the second movie actually affect him. So I can appreciate that the director did. I also like the interaction that Tony had with the young boy. I'm looking up his name right now. Let's see here. Ty Simpkins. Harley is his name.
Okay, yeah.
Really great back and forth with him. It's kind of, Tony Stark's, I'm gonna give you shit, I'll give you shit right back. And this kid is like, what? 13, 14.
10, 12, 13.
Yeah, exactly. Young kid, but he just gives it right back to him. I think that's great that some kids can have, just as much, back and forth as Tony Stark can. You think Tony Stark is the most suave guy that there is, but it's great that he kind of puts him in his place. One thing that I've told Hunter that is, Penny, to me, is just kind of a character that is not lost, but I just don't think the relationship between them is...
Wait, you mean Pepper?
What did I say, Penny?
You said Penny. You went Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang. Pepper, Penny,
Tomato. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X.
They're all black, you never really know, right? Yeah. They're all, white women.
Yeah, there you go.
God. Anyway, I just think that the relationship between them is just so blah. It's like, it was built up in the first movie, absolutely, and the second one a little bit. I just want to, he's a suave guy. He's attractive, handsome man, and he doesn't get any girls. All he has is some anniversary being some big ass and stuffed animal in for her, and it's very boring. That's probably the most boring part of this movie. The rest, where Pepper is involved, is extremely exciting and very, very action packed. But up until that point, and up until certain events happen, with you seen in the trailer the house getting destroyed, it's just very, show me something else. Show me a different dynamic of that relationship.
All right, two compliments, one complaint, then we'll give our final grades here. They expanded Pepper Potts' role very subtly, but they did it in a very organic way, and I was very happy. So
are you disagreeing with me?
Yeah, I guess I am. Because I like the fact that some Marvel movies, and even Fox Marvel movies, have been kind of notorious for us having that damsel in distress, and I was just like, you know what? Especially in the comics, Pepper's such a smart character, and she's the one person that can keep Tony Stark in line, and I appreciate the fact that she kind of a couple times goes, no, we're doing this shit, and he's like, but, she's like, no, we're doing this shit. And seeing her in the armor is a really cool little,
it gets better. No. The beginning is the... Yeah, no, continue, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was a little disappointed because, to get into the comics here for a moment, for those of you that read them, Pepper at a point does get her own armor, which is called Rescue, and for Iron Man 4, Lord willing, Marvel are no longer cheapskates, and they actually re-sign goddamn Robert Downey Jr. to a 4th Iron Man. It would be so cool to see her, War Machine, and Iron Man fighting fill in the blank. So I was like, just that little tease of, oh, she can actually handle the armor. It's like, oh my god, if they pull the trigger on this would be awesome. So I love the fact that they actually gave her more to do, and she wasn't just the screaming Mary Jane Watson, like the girl, in Spider-Man.
She's definitely more level-headed in this film.
Second off, the last 40 minutes of this movie, I don't know if Shane Black was asleep, maybe at a point or something like that, but it's like he woke up and it's like, oh wow, so the fans want a bunch of action, we get with plot. I can do that in the last 40 minutes, especially, and you see it if you look at the Super Bowl spot where Air Force One is bombed and you see all those people falling out of the sky. That is one of the coolest action scenes I've seen in the last 5 years. It's one of those things.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's like it's plot all the way until then, and then, like you said, they just wake up, and it's like, well, we better give them what they want, and it's a great last 20 minutes of the end of the movie, 25 minutes, and it's just, really worth the movie, to be honest with you. I mean, just seeing the end, and seeing, like you said, in the trailer where, or what is it, the Super Bowl commercial? Is that
Super Bowl. Yeah, Super Bowl.
Yeah, where they're falling out of the plane. That's just a great sequence, and that that really kind of brought me up to what I thought it would be to, what my grade now.
And last compliment for this movie, I'd say probably the last half hour, if you saw the second trailer, you saw a very huge nerd little nudge, like, hey, we didn't forget about you guys. You see the Hall of Armor, you see, the Hulkbuster armor, which, if the Hulk goes crazy in the Avengers 2, we might actually see. You see the space armor, which could lead into Guardians of the Galaxy if Marvel goes that way. You see all these nice little nerd nods to Marvel Comics. It's like, oh my god, you guys did your homework, well done. And you see them face the extremist soldiers, and it's like, this is great. Whoever thought bravo to whoever did this.
Absolutely.
Now with that said,
let's see what's the final verdict.
The big negative on this for me, or one of the biggest negatives, is there are a couple Avengers nods that are just so awkwardly shoved in. It's like it almost stops the movie. Like it's the one complaint to pull from a movie, I know, random, to pull from Star Trek, the original, the Abrams reboot, where they kind of put these lines in, and you're kind of like, you didn't need to do that. You could have left that alone. And there's a point where Guy Pearce's Adrian Killian makes this comment where he's like, oh, ever since that hammer fell out of the sky, subtlety's kind of gone out of the window.
Right.
And I remember that was a moment watching the movie, I'm like, wow, you totally just stopped the whole movie to stick that random Avengers Thor reference in. You didn't need to do that. They already had addressed the Avengers with the post-traumatic stress disorder. They really didn't need to.
They already had backstory. They don't really need to continue on with that.
There were a couple points in the movie like that where it's like, oh, you could have left that out.
It's like, hey, remember the Avengers movie? Like, this is connected. It's just like just too much over the top.
It really was, and it does kind of it. In my opinion, it actually hurt the movie, and it kind of hurt the grade I'm going to give it. So, in case you kids do not know, our highest rating is a FFT, which is fan-fucking-tastic. Then we go A+, A-, all the way down letter grades. And our lowest ascent of Dante's Inferno, aka Hell, is a go fuck yourself. This movie, I went into it, again, like I said, optimistically cautious, thinking.
Optimistically cautious. Let me just stop you there.
Go ahead.
Josh Hunter is as far as I know, Iron Man is probably one of his favorite movies / comic remakes onto film.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
The build up to this movie for him, as far as I know, it was off the charts. So the way that it met his expectations should account for something, I believe. Because your expectations were so high, it actually met a lot of them for you, correct?
It met most of them.
Right.
Like, the thing is, like, Shane Black hasn't done a movie, I don't think, since Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which I believe was 95. So it's probably been almost 20 years since he's directed a film. So it's been a while. I know he has that relationship with Rob Downey Jr. The script, it is solid. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. The humor is really funny in this. I was pleasantly surprised. Your classic Robert Downey Jr. humor. Yeah, I mean, he did a great job, as he always does. He's Robert Downey Jr. He's a 2-time Academy Award nominated actor. He knows what he's doing at this point with this character. I will say the last thing before I actually give my grade. This felt like almost a re-audition for Iron Man for him, like, because in case you guys don't know, his contract actually ends with Iron Man 3, so he's actually renegotiating his contract with Marvel here as we speak, and it really did feel like he was just like, oh yeah, by the way, you can't replace me because I completely embody this character, and after watching this, I couldn't agree more. This guy is Iron Man. Fun fact, I actually looked this up. Movies without Robert Downey Jr., the Marvel films, make 65% less at the box office. That is a huge drop off. Right. So if Marvel is smart, they will re-sign him for whatever he asks for as ever many movies he wants to do this. So with all that said, a couple awkward Avengers moments. The plot twist is going to divide fans. I fully acknowledge that. But for me, the plot twist actually enhanced the movie and made it better. The action scene's really good. Again, a couple of awkward Avengers references. Some of the plot, not the plot. Some of the lines don't always work, but overall, it's a damn good movie, and it's definitely better than Iron Man 2. It's right there on the cusp of being as good as Iron Man 1. You could actually make a case it could be as good, in a couple of years after you watch it a few times. So, yeah, I'd give it an A- myself.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Coming out of the movie, it was more of an A for you, as far as I know. And then we talked about it a little bit and kind of dissected it a bit, and I came on the same decision as you, the A-. The action is great as always, and we love seeing the Iron Man character do this thing, and we love seeing, just the development of him, but it's behind the scenes, the plot development with him and Penny.
Pepper. Oh my god.
Penny. Hey Penny. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking James Bond right now.
You are. You're thinking.
Well, it's pretty much like some rich white guy with his assistant who he occasionally has sex with. Anyways, I just think that relationship just fell short, and the action was absolutely there, but I'd have to agree with you. I think I'm going to go with A- on this one, just because it is Iron Man. Iron Man 3, way better than the second one. Very comparable to the first one, with a lot of new stuff, things you wouldn't expect. The twist is great. I love the twist along with Hunter, but I'd have to give it an A- as well. Very... you should go see it, absolutely. If you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely a movie you need to see.
Oh, and by the way, fun little story here. Wow, we've been recording for over 41 minutes. Go us. You don't need to pay 3D to see this.
Absolutely.
You really don't.
No.
I love Marvel, and Scott will tell you I am a huge Marvel guy. But I was sitting there, and the only reason we got the 3D tickets is because I'm terrible at directions, and I gave us the wrong.
He gave me the wrong directions, and then he blamed it on me, and the manager yelled at us, but he ended up giving us the 3D glasses and taking us to the 3D movie, so we saw it in 3D anyways, which it was badass.
Yeah.
But
we paid to see it in regular.
Nothing you'd miss if it's regular.
Yeah, the only scene that was really a standout in the 3D was the Air Force One scene. That was a scene I was like, oh wow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you get a real feel for what's going on in that scene.
But one scene out of almost a 2.5 hour long movie, it's not worth it. You'd save your money, buy the ridiculously overpriced concessions, and just see it in 2D. That's what I'd recommend. But anyways, kids, that's our Iron Man 3 review. We may do a spoiler filled review. Who knows? We'll figure that out.
And we'll just just do whatever we feel like doing. So you can suck it if you want.
Yeah, that's
or not. Subscribe to us, please. Oh my gosh, do whatever you have to do to subscribe to us. Tell your friends.
Spread us around. Tell your friends. But that's Iron Man 3 review. Go see this. It comes out on Blu-ray, I believe, in August. I've already pre-ordered it at Walmart. I know I'm sad, but you definitely should definitely watch this. So, all right, guys, we're good. We're out.
Cheers.